What does love require of us? How was your journey? No, not what happened to you as you travelled in a physical sense today. Better, I suppose, how is your journey? Your ecumenical journey that's got you to this point in your life's pilgrimage. Where will that journey take you? Where will that journey take you in the providence of God in these few days that we are to spend together? Let me share with you something of my journey thus far. A glance, if you like, into my rear view mirror as the forum begins. And let me encourage you to reflect on your own journey, learn from it, and share it with others in our time together in this special place. This particular and special place where so many wonderful ecumenical encounters have taken place in these islands. St. Paul says to us, "To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good." Perhaps my journey began through my dad, when I noticed difference and rivalry, even hostility. You see, he was a brass bandsman who went twice a year over top to Lancashire. No, he didn't like it either. From our Yorkshire home. He went once to play for a procession of witness for Protestant churches, culminating in the most amazing chapel tea. And once to play for a religious procession for the Roman Catholic Church. They were rewarded for that job by much booze, alcohol. That didn't please my dad. He preferred the chapel teas. Or maybe my real journey began in the early days of my working life, in the heady days of the 1960s, attempting to find faith and defend religion in the pub on Friday lunchtimes, over a pint and a beef sandwich. Most of my workmates had little time for organised religion, but they loved to argue about any and every aspect of life. I was bested in many a debate, but found an ally in Joe McGowan, a salesman and a Roman Catholic. We stood shoulder to shoulder, vocal for the faith. Or perhaps my journey really began at Scargill House in Kettlewell in the Yorkshire Dales, where as a young adult, I spent weekends with others of my generation whose background was Anglican or Roman Catholic. They were life-changing encounters. Incidentally, that's when I fell in love with my first nun. To make matters worse, she belonged to an order called the Cross and Passion. Known to all her mates as the Passionate Sisters. Oh, dear. That's not in the script. I wasn't going to tell you that. I'm sure I began as a youngster with the innocent but possibly God-inspired sense that a Christian was a Christian was a Christian. That all churches were just that, churches. I felt I belonged to one Christian church until life experience taught me about division. Until I understood that church leaders, with whatever titles, were no better at sharing power than our current politicians struggling with government in coalition. My working assumption that underpinned my ministry within the Methodist Church has been and is that unity is God's gift and desire. Deep down within me is the feeling and knowledge that the oneness of the Christian faith is the underlying reality. That it's our failure that creates division. that it's my failure that perpetuates division. We are better together, even if I can't quite imagine how that will work out in its fullness. I owe a tremendous debt to the Methodist Church that formed me, nurtured me, and allowed me a place as an ordained presbyter, a minister of word and sacrament. But my church, the Methodist Church, my home, has always been too small. My spirituality and practice has borrowed and adapted from the whole spectrum of faith. The gifts I've received from other traditions, the traditions in this room, your traditions, have enriched me and my tradition. They've become an integral part of my faith and witness. I'm a product of this more ecumenical age, thank God. A couple of weeks ago, I was in a beautiful part, mind you, it's all beautiful, of the independent kingdom of Yorkshire. We voted for independence in 2016. And we'll win. Yes. I was at Wydale Hall outside Scarborough, and I was leading a day of reflection for around 30 retired Methodist ministers, male and female. I'd chosen as my title, Whither Ecumenism, ? Now, of course, you can spell whither, you know that. Yeah, I encourage those folk to share their experiences of the ecumenical journey of the last half century. Some had served the World Church, some had been in theological education, and many had been itinerant ministers serving in the circuits of the British Conference. Many shared inspiring and moving stories of the breaking of barriers, of the richness of encounter across denominations, and of personal friendships. Friendships that had left the deepest gratitude in these women and men. It was a privilege for me to hear their testimonies. But some shared deep frustration at how so much had been promised through ecumenical sharing, and yet progress had in their mind been slow or had stalled. I try to encourage them to recognize that it will take more than one generation to overcome the division of 1,000 years. I tried also to explore with them the richness of ecumenical sharing in England, and we're all here tonight. I tried to share with them something of the excitement and enthusiasm I've felt as I've acted as the chair of trustees and convener of the enabling group. This richness includes newer churches and other branches of the Christian community from elsewhere in the world becoming embedded in our culture. What we now know as black and ethnic minority churches, Pentecostal churches, Orthodox communities, beginning to make their contribution to the diversity of witness and service that's offered in Christ's name in this place. Through our day together, a number of those retired Methodist ministers confirmed that they had experienced a new perspective on their place in the story of unity, and they went away feeling encouraged. That's where their journey had taken them, and they'd had a chance to reflect upon it. Where has your journey taken you? And where are you going? The conference room in Tavistock Place was full. This is the room in the CTE offices, Church Together in England offices, that has around the walls honours boards with the names of those who've served the free churches and the broader ecumenical movement down through the years. Holding a meeting in that room, you really feel surrounded by the community of saints. Or perhaps you feel rather like, as a young minister, I used to feel, because one of the churches that I looked after had a rather forbidding portrait of Wesley, just as you walked out of the vestry door. And I could hear his voice. It won't be as good as one of my sermons, pal. You know. Sometimes you feel that communion of saints on those honours boards approve of what you're doing. And sometimes you recognize that many of those saints, and they were saints in their day, never saw the depth and the breadth and the variety that is around us today. Their vision, because of where they lived and who they were at that time, was actually much narrower than ours. I was chairing in that room a gathering of our member churches to discuss our work. Church together in England has 37, 38 members and still growing. It'll be 39 tomorrow. We have amongst us bodies in association described as the ecumenical movement's voluntary sector. The range, the variety, the diversity of our members is amazing and challenging. When I fancy a bit of hyperbole, I tell people it's the widest range of Christian experience on the planet. And actually, that may be true, that the current ecumenical scene in England is the widest expression of Christian commitment and variety on the planet, and that's not hyperbole at all. Listening to contributions from that range of churches who vary in size, ways of governing, traditions, ministries, and activity is a humbling experience. And they all want to be in the room. Well, most of the time. They're committed to listening to others, to getting to know others, and to share in a whole variety of ways. The ecumenical tent is large. The ecumenical tent is crowded. There are occasions when some who are near the edge look as if they may sneak out under the sides of the tent, and some look slightly uncomfortable when they recognize somebody else who was also in the tent. Moderating that lot, my task until recently, was a delight. Each church believes, and reckon this because I think it's true, each church believes that the way it does business is either the only way or the best way. Some churches have, until they entered this tent, always worked alone. They've never had to collaborate with anybody. For some, recognizing others as church in a full sense is easy and natural. For others, it's actually very difficult. But we stay together and increasingly learn from each other and increasingly bear one another's burdens. Why is all this important? You may remember that our country hosted a small event with a bit of running and jumping in London this summer. Oh, and the odd boat in your place, yes. In common with many places, inspired by Going for Gold, we hosted an event on a school field in Knaresborough for all the youngsters connected to local churches. I spent the afternoon chatting to their parents, most of whom had little or no contact with the church. In between cheering on their children, eating hot dogs and ice cream, in a natural way, we talked about many things, from family to politics, from local issues to global concerns, the place of the church and faith in this, the year of the Olympics. that afternoon has challenged us, in my place, to seek unity in mission. To tell the Christian story to a whole generation who've not heard it, and they live in our town. That's where my journey has taken me. Where's yours going? I tell one final story from my journey that's become for me a most powerful parable from which I draw strength and inspiration for the continuing journey into unity. The Methodist Church sent me to a European conference. I don't think they understood how important it was, otherwise they would have sent someone else. But I arrived in Basel in Switzerland in the late spring of a year that changed the world, 1989. I was a delegate to the European Ecumenical Assembly, Peace with Justice. The first time since the Reformation that European churches, North, South, East and West, Catholic, Orthodox and Protestant, had come together. We felt the thrill of change in the air, of unity as we met together, and sensed the turmoil that later in the year brought down the Berlin Wall. For my generation, that wall was one of the most potent symbols of division in our world. We worshipped together in Basel Cathedral and had been encouraged to take with us a small bag of soil from our place. In my case, our garden in Ashby de la Zeus. By the way, can you imagine getting a small bag of soil through the security? And what is it? No, don't go there. But we all brought the soil from all over Europe. And during worship, we poured these offerings of the earth into a container and mixed the soils of Europe together. We then planted a tree and watered it. At the door of the cathedral, it grew. We heard later that tree at the door of the cathedral had been vandalized, burnt, destroyed. But then the following spring, green shoots had been seen. The plant was not dead. It was alive. It was flourishing in the soil of our continent. Out of our diversity came unity and new life. We were better together. As Scripture says, to each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. If one member suffers, all suffer together with it. If one member is honored, all rejoice together with it. What does love require of us? And where will our journey take us in these next few days? However, wherever, to God be the glory.